are joined today by Rob Cowburn, Libertarian candidate for Attorney General. Let's start with your background. Where are you from and what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Grew up here, went to Mount Lebanon, went on to Point Park University here in Pittsburgh, and eventually to Boston for law school, but had a big desire to come back to Pittsburgh. So me and the wife moved back, started our family here, started my career here. I'm a trial attorney, mostly in civil and business litigation, but I practice in a wide range of areas. Do a lot of civil rights under Section 1983 for government misconduct. Practiced in statutory and legislative reform. A lot of efforts with the mail-in ballot. I was part of the team that worked on the Ritter v. Migliore case that overturned the mail-in ballots, undated mail-in ballots here in Pennsylvania, and criminal defense, state planning, and a wide range of other areas here in Pennsylvania.
How did you get interested in politics and public service?
Well, I'm not, to be quite honest with you. I don't really have a desire to do this, but I can't sit by and watch what's continuing to happen with the two major parties. That's really what inspired me to want to do this. I just want to call attention to what they're putting out is a continuation of what we've had. That's gotten us to, I think, a very troubling place over the last 40, 50, 60 years. And I'd like to see something change and have a return to the rights of the people in Pennsylvania rather than the elites.
Why did you want to run for Attorney General in order to, change the way that the country and state are run currently?
Sure. Well, I think that you hear a lot of the other candidates tell you what they can do for Pennsylvanians, what they're going to do, the programs they're going to implement, the measures they're going to take, the cases they're going to bring. I take a different approach. I believe that the people of Pennsylvania know what's best for them. I don't think that they need people from Harrisburg or Washington telling them what to do. I think that they know well enough how to deal with each other, handle their own business, handle their families, and in their local communities. And I am running to have a return to the power of the people, I'm not here to do for you, and I'm here to get things out of your way to allow you to do it for yourself.
What are some skills and experience that you would bring to the office of Attorney General?
Well, I am a well-versed trial attorney. I think that that's a unique position among the other candidates. I know Mr. Sunday is a criminal trial attorney, but I've been in every arena from criminal, civil, and everything in between. So I have a wide range of real on-the-ground trial experience and litigating cases for the last 10 years here in Pennsylvania that I think is unique among the other candidates.
What aspects of Pennsylvania would you want to address and change as Attorney General?
Well, I don't actually really want to change much. What I'd like to have is a return to the understandings of a founding of Pennsylvania and of our federal constitution. We've got a pretty good understanding in Pennsylvania of our rights, and I as people, but the legislators and the attorney generals in the past seem to think that they know better. So what I would like to do is move away regulatory barriers and bureaucratic tape to allow industry and participation of the people at the local level back into Pennsylvania economics, into the schools, into ordinary life, and allow people where they are to figure out what they want to do. So what I would do is remove the barriers of people being able to participate on their own and decide in their communities what they want to do.
Besides being a trial lawyer, what other examples do you differ from your opponents in this race?
Well, I think that I'm the only one advocating for a return to the rights of the people. All of the other candidates, again, are telling that you what they can do for you, what they're going to do, the programs they're going to implement, the programs they've been a part of. Again, I don't think that a bunch of people sitting in Harrisburg know how to decide what is right for the local school in Huntington County, or what's right for the healthcare of people in Allegheny County. I think that those people know best. So, how I would differ, and really what I would bring is trying to clear the way of these barriers that the state and the federal government have put on through regulation and state law and federal law that are getting in the way of people choosing for themselves.
You were running as a member of the Libertarian Party. Can you talk about the platform of the Libertarian Party?
Sure. The Libertarian Party basically operates on a single principle called the non-aggression principle. What that means is that we refuse to advocate for the use of aggressive violence or force in carrying out our political or personal goals. That means that there is no justification for initiating violence or force against any other person for any means. And we expand that to the government. So there's no legitimate cause for the police to use force to assert a law against people who do not consent to it, so long as they're not violating the rights of another person. Once you cross that barrier and you've initiated force against somebody else, then defensive force is always justified. But the libertarian principle hinges on the idea that it's never justified to initiate violence or force against anybody else.
Why did you feel called to the Libertarian Party as opposed to the Democratic or Republican parties?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think it was because I started out giving them both a try to know meaningful change or success. And then I found this idea that I think is in a traditional American idea, that it's the people who know how to run their lives, and it's the people who know how to make the decisions among themselves. And that's something that's really not offered by either of the two major parties. Both of them have very specific and identifiable goals of which they're trying to promote and use laws to advance their own agendas. When really these things are reasonable minds can reasonably differ, and the people should be deciding, which ideology is best for them where they live. So the Libertarian Party seems to be the only one promoting a return to the right of the people and the right of decentralized local government, where I think a lot of the decisions that are being made should be made. One issue in particular, school choice. We've got groups on one side advocating for free speech and the right to teach whatever they would like, and we've got another group advocating for restrictions and the right of the parents to be involved. Well, no one size fits all for any area. So this is best decided at the local level, where parents participating in their school board should decide what kind of curriculum they want to have. And to think that we can create a law in Harrisburg or a law in Washington that's going to fit everybody's desires is I think, fruitless endeavor. And we should have a return to local decisions. And the Libertarians seem to be the only one of that mind, and that's why I've joined with them.
Now into some specific policy issues. As Attorney General, what would you do to help Pennsylvania's economy?
Well, I think that we had it right in the first half of the American experiment, where we had open and free markets regulating the industries, and the people seem to thrive pretty good on their own. We talk about how America was the greatest country in the world and the richest country in the world, but we never talk about how we got there. We got there because we had open and free voluntary interactions between the people, and they decided what was best, and they grew the economy. And it wasn't until the 20th century experiment of overregulation and bureaucratic interference, where we have seen American industry stifled. We've seen the economy really struggling, and we've seen, most importantly, people struggling and prices skyrocketing. So I think the lesson in that is to return to our original principles of allowing people to interact voluntarily among each other, take away the bureaucratic tape, take away the regulations that send industry overseas, and return to people choosing how to interact among each other without all of this unnecessary red tape.
What are your views on Pennsylvania's gun laws?
Well, I think the Pennsylvania Constitution is quite clear. The right to bear arms shall not be questioned, and I think we here actually have a stronger protection of the Second Amendment than even the Second Amendment in the Constitution. There's no justifiable excuse to infringe on the people's right to bear arms. I work with a group out of Philadelphia, a guy by the name of Maj Touré and his Solutionary Center, that advocate for the return of respect for the Second Amendment and self-governance. The Second Amendment is how we protect the rest of our rights, and there should be, in my opinion, no limitation on it. Plus, it's one of the few vestiges left of where we have genuine systemic racism in our system. Most convictions, I think over 50% of convictions for nonviolent possession charges are of African American men. So the gun laws are racist. The gun laws infringe upon the right to protect yourself and to enforce the other rights. And I think we need a real recognition that the right to bear arms is how we protect every other right that we have.
Would you uphold Pennsylvania's law that legalizes abortions up until 24 weeks?
So the abortion issue is I think probably the most challenging issue that faces our culture right now. And that's because there are merits on both sides of the arguments. If you believe that a baby is invested with an undying soul by its creator from the moment of conception, then you're never going to be able to see or agree with any type of laws permitting abortion. But if you don't follow that belief, then I think there's a wide range of where people can differ there. So I think we can take a lesson from the Dobbs decision and deregulate this even more. We are in a unique position in Pennsylvania where we have two major metropolitan hubs on either side of the state and a lot of rural communities in the middle. And I don't think that they're ever going to agree on this issue, and they both have merit for why they don't. So if we take a lesson from Dobbs and deregulate even more and put this down to the county level, I think people have the right to choose what they want to have going on around them. And I think that's where this issue should be dealt with, not at the federal level, not at the state level, but at the local level of what people want or don't want to have going on in their communities.
How would you address the opioid crisis in Pennsylvania?
Well, the drug war in itself has been an absolute abject failure, and I think it's time to recognize that. The way to treat drug use is through drug addiction. The criminalization has only made things worse. The stricter the laws get, it seems the more addicts and tragedy that we have. I think that we need a complete repeal of the war on drugs. We recognize this with the prohibition era, that the problems created through prohibition are far worse than the actual use of substances themselves. And beyond that, you can't legislate morality. Morality comes from the family. Morality comes from our churches, and morality comes from the community. And that's where this issue needs to be dealt with. Not to mention, we can eradicate the fentanyl issue overnight by legalizing these substances, so that at the very least, people who are going to use them have substances that they know what they are and they're not contaminated. Not that I advocate for drug use. I think it's a tragedy, and anybody going through that is in need of help. But through the war on drugs, we have created multiple generations of criminal activity in communities. We've pitted the police against their communities, and you can ask any officer. It is not a respected position to be an officer, and it should be. So when we pit our police against our communities, and we are multiple generations of criminal activity in communities, I think that it's clear it's time to end the drug war and approach us from a new direction.
While we're talking on the subject of drugs, I know that legalizing marijuana is a big discussion in Pennsylvania right now. As Attorney General, how would you react to that? Would you want marijuana to be legalized or not?
I believe that free adults have the right to use any substances that they want, and there should be no prohibition on the use of any substances.
Your website has many mentions of, quote, government corruption. What do you believe are examples of government corruption in Pennsylvania?
Well, you don't have to look back too far in history to find judges selling children into institutions for profit. We have the highest paid legislative body of any state, while we also have the oldest population of any state. And it seems like that money could be a lot better spent helping the people than lining the pockets of politicians. I think the more money that you put into the system, the more opportunity you have for corruption to be presented. So we have all of the makings of the potential for corruption and a good history of it as well. This country was founded on the principle of protecting the rights and the privacy of the people, not the rights and the privacy of the government officials or the government itself. And we need to redefine what the role of government ought to be in protecting and preserving the rights of the people, and not the privacy and privileges of those in government.
What would you do to put an end to this corruption?
Well, I think a campaign of open and required transparency at all government meetings. I would encourage the participation at local government by the people, and we would focus the vast majority of resources in the Attorney General's office on the investigation of potential corruption by legislators and other government officials, particularly with government contractors.
Attorney generals tend to hear some cases involving election credibility, and I know you mentioned working on a case involving mail-in ballots. How did you approach these types of situations?
Well, for better or worse, and for whatever the truth of the matter happens to be, the reality is that Pennsylvanians have lost faith in the election process, and that needs to change. This year we've already had the Bureau of Elections coming out telling us that the results are not going to be available on the night of the election, which I'm not sure how they could possibly anticipate that months in advance, and I'm not sure why they would be coaching Pennsylvanians to be prepared for that. I think that whatever the processes are, they're not trusted, they're not transparent, and they're not able to be properly vetted. And we need to have a return to a process that people can trust. And that's what I would advocate for.
What are some concerns that you've heard from voters while out on the campaign trail?
Everybody's pretty concerned about prices, and that's a complex issue. Prices are going up for everybody. I think that has something to do with all of the bureaucratic red tape that we put in place that stifles industry and increases the cost of doing business. So as Attorney General, I would try to remove all of those barriers to businesses participating and returning to Pennsylvania. If we understand how how business is really generated, where jobs come from, what prices are. I think that we would do better to understand how to protect those rights. But people seem to be most concerned about the rising costs and scarcity of jobs.
As a third-party candidate, how have you been campaigning and getting your message across without having, the name recognition of a Democratic or a Republican candidate?
Well, we don't get much attention from the traditional media sources, but we're living in a very unique age of the internet. So we're able to use those means to reach a lot of people, but really it's a grassroots effort. It's boots on the ground, people knocking doors, getting on the phones, getting out into communities. And again, that's why I promote local decentralization in the government, because you can actually reach the people and see them face to face, and people seem to be on their best behavior when you're in front of them, rather than seeing them on a TV or interacting on the internet. So we use boots on the ground and knocking doors, and that's how we're trying to reach the people.
What was the process like as a third-party candidate for getting on the Pennsylvania ballot?
In Pennsylvania, we have, I would say, not the best, but not the worst rules for third-party candidates to get on. I think that I was required to get around 2,700 signatures. So we had, very dedicated volunteers out every day from the opening to the night before, getting, about double the signature requirements that we needed because of the challenge process. And with the recent redistricting, people might be registered in an area where they aren't necessarily living in anymore because of the redistricting. So we're facing a lot of challenges in that area. So it was definitely a significant effort given our limited funds, but we were able to amass a full volunteer base and get the signature requirements that we needed, I think, sufficiently.
Take the last few minutes here to tell Pennsylvania's voters why they should vote for you.
Well, you shouldn't. I don't think that you should vote for any of us. I think that you should return government to your local areas and stop participating in the federal and state overreach. These people don't have your best interests at heart. Return to your communities and research jury nullification. It's a power of the people that we here in Pennsylvania have that right to.
Rob Cowburn, Libertarian candidate for Attorney General, thank you for your time.
Thank you.